I'll give you time to do that. KB, what's up? What's up? Do y'all hear me out there? Testing. 1, 2, 2. Make sure y'all hear me. Miss Fam, do you hear me? Good, good, good. How are you? How's it going out there in that good old Arizona weather, Miss Fam? Going good. Deeds, Mr. Deeds Oliver, my man. We go back like Facebook. First of all, I want to give a moment for people to log in and participate in this conversation. Miss Ariel, how are you? Good to see you. As you know, we're going to be focusing on the heal continue to heal. I'm delighted to have this conversation and continue the conversation in support of you all. And I think this is very good, very helpful. It's 110 degrees, Ms. Fam. I'm certainly sure it is. It's like 30, 40 degrees here, maybe 50. But I want to make sure that we have ample enough people so that we don't have to go back. I may be bringing up an additional guest sometime later on in the point of the conversation. But as we get ready to get started, I have a few things I want to say. And I think it's important to say these things. And I want to start off by first thanking you all for taking the time to come out and participate. I know there's been plenty of lives that have been going on. People have a lot of conversation. Hello, Miss Lavina. How are you? And there's been a lot of conversation, and it's been meaningful conversation that has been going on for many, many months. But I want to lay some few things out, and I want to say this most importantly, this journey that individuals have been on, that have seen, that have been participating in from whatever way, whatever direction, I honestly believe that all of this is meaningful and necessary from whatever spectrum you're coming from. But I want to say something very important, and I think I need to start by saying the gentleman that we all know, and many of you don't know him personally. I know him personally. Mr. Seiko Woods has started this journey and has done a lot of work. And we wanted to make sure that in his efforts to do things that he has done, to bring light to what has happened, we want to continue to participate in an effort that not only starts with bringing the exposure, talking about the problems, but then we continue to transition into solutions, conversations of healing, conversations of reconciliation, where people could experience a true transition. So at some point when this is over, we all can look back and say we've learned something. There were some lessons learned. And so, Seiko has labored very hard to express, to expose, and to engage. Recently, we had Brother Billy Davis and the brothers from ABC, the gentlemen who have, moved on, and they have taken another perspective. And so, as we already know, some water, some plant, some water, and ultimately there is an increase. And we want to bring everybody into a space that's safe, and we'll continue to do what we're led to do, what we're called to do, but I wanted to make sure that the work that individuals such as Bobby Carter, of course, we had Brenda Carter, Miss Shonda, even Lee Green or Lee Trust from different perspectives, be giving counsel. A lot of this counsel has came from Bishop Shines, and of course, Pastor Marlon Reed, Pastor Rodney Long, of course, Tim Meekins. This doesn't feel good. This is not a good thing. We're not pleasurable. It's not a pleasurable experience, but ultimately, we want people to heal. We want people to be restored. And I think we've had quite a few healthy conversations. And so I want to just acknowledge these individuals. I applaud those brothers. Once again, we need to continue to support those brothers, continue to support one another so that the efforts that we seek out to do be not for the glory of just getting somebody out, but people being healed. And healing is most important. So this conversation was going to be very different. I think this is a demonstration of what this has looked like over the years. This guest that I'm bringing in, I'm grateful for having conversation. I've known them for some years, and I've had an opportunity to engage in some very meaningful dialogue. And so I wanted to bring this guest on to really, really speak about this conversation of healing and what this feels like, what it looks like, right? A lot of times we go through hurt, we go through variations of pain, but we also experience a lot of triggers. And we have to be able to understand that the word of God, of course, is the ultimate healer, but we also need conversation. Many of us have sought out counseling. Many people I know have been counseled. They're getting wise counsel. And as we go through this journey of healing, the important thing is to note that there's only one common enemy. And we know that what we're wrestling against and what the struggle is not an individual. It is more or less dealing with something that is called darkness, the spirit. The Bible is very clear when it says that we wrestle not against flesh or blood. The ultimate goal for all of us is to move on. And I think it's important to move on. But as I talk about the healing journey, as you already know, recap, we brought on Brenda Carter, and Brenda Carter and myself talked about the different stages of how you need to observe and look at these cults and the experiences that we've had and the overcoming the abuse and overcoming different levels of spiritual abuse. And it was a great conversation. Brenda provided some content, some research, and she made that content and research available for you all. If you have any questions about what that information that was provided for you, more than likely you can either reach out to Brenda. Brenda, if she's in here, she can put her email address up, or you can find her Facebook page where you'll be able to locate that information. Then I brought in Dr. Danita Morales, and she was a trained, educated physician, doctor, psychiatrist. She spoke about the psychological effects of spiritual abuse. She gave a very excellent presentation as she talked about the journey of healing and what that looks like and the importance of healing. There's one thing that, we want to take from this is that evil, wickedness has no respect to person. Pain has no respect to person. And everyone is going through different things at different levels. And we're learning to respect that and understand that no one is where you are or I am. And we had all different encounters of these kinds of things. And so I had an opportunity to bring on Miss Sonetta Wooden and Monica, good friends of mine who were in Japan. And I had experienced a level of somewhat similar to what we are talking about or what we've been talking about. And I was able to share a level of transparency. We inspected the mindset of leadership when these things happen. I gave you all an inside perspective where that the former pastor's wife at the ministry that I was at in Japan we're able to reconcile after many, many years and to sit on a platform and to talk about healing and to share our experience. We've got a lot of good feedback from that. And I think that was a very important conversation. And based on the conversation that we've heard on yesterday with Billy and the gentleman from former members from ABC, that was another healthy transition. So I just want to acknowledge where we are, where we're going, what this really looks like, because we don't want to be in a space where we just stay there. We really have to grow and heal. Ariel says, starting to feel better. I pray you're doing well. Let's good evening, Miss Andrea, Miss Loretta. I see you. John Baptist. Man, you still alive, man? John the Baptist? No, I'm kidding. Mr. Ronald James Hayes, thank you, sir. And Shonda Cates. Fam, I thank you all and the 34 people that are here. We're going to go ahead and have this conversation. I want to first want to make very clear that this is a very safe space. This is a very sensitive space, but most importantly, this is a space of healing. And so I have online or watching this live who are in the chat, a couple of counselors who are making themselves available. One in particular that I know personally will maybe brought up again to kind of give a recap and to continue to encourage us all. And so here we are. I want to introduce to you a good friend of mine. Some of you may not know her, but some of you may know her. And I want to bring her in. Her name is LaDonna Jackson. Miss Jackson.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
It is a pleasure to talk to you. And really,
Pleasure to be.
Yeah, it's really happy. I'm really happy to see you. Really happy to have seen you for the first time or for several times after many, many years. I remember the emails you were sending with the research.
Yes. Yes.
And I was like, well, man, where does she find this from? I can't find this on Google.
That's correct. It's long time.
And I said, man, this woman is digging stuff in the crates.
Yeah, but we were good at that.
Yeah. So how is it? How is the weather and how is social distancing in the state of Houston?
Well, yeah. We're, as you know, Dallas, where you're now reside. Now I don't know where you plan on back.
Yeah. Dallas is wonderful. I love Dallas.
Yeah, good. Houston and Dallas are like two different states, weather-wise. It's just humid, sometimes clear, but it's about in the 70s right now.
In the 70s.
So we're 73 today, but tomorrow will be mid-80s. That's the way it is.
I'm waiting for the state of Virginia. I'm sitting here in my office and I'm waiting on the state of Virginia to open up so I can get me a haircut. Boy, look, I take this hat off, I look like a Nazarite.
For me, it's a nail shop. We all just looking, prehistoric here.
I know the ladies in the chat and on this live, I know you all can agree.
Oh, yes.
You are at the first place called the Nail and Hair Salon.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So how is social distancing? We know that we are still in this space of the pandemic, and how have you social distanced? Have you had a good time? I know you said. Matter of fact, let's talk a little bit about your profession because you are an amazing opera singer.
I don't know.
Will you sing? Will you create some music in social distancing?
No. I've dreamt in song, but let me tell you, I haven't been singing much.
Okay.
I actually, I haven't been doing as an introvert. I've enjoyed social distancing. I'm one of those homebodies, so I'm not. social distancing has messed with my sleep cycle. If
Have
anything, yeah, it has. Been waking up a lot more during the night. Um, um, I still talk to my friends,
Mhm,
but um, you know that. So just it's minimally affected me
mhm,
physically,
mhm,
but um, you know, but I'm used to doing this. I'm used to staying within myself,
mhm.
used to being introspective and inward. So I'm not affected by this. It's not a new normal. It's just my norm.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, you look at it this way, it gives you enough time to really, really prepare. If you're starting a
Yeah.
business, if you got creative ideas. I know that you have just recently, or was it not recently, got your doctorates or such. What was that? Can you talk a little
Yeah.
about some of the things you've been doing?
Well, I am going to be transitioning into a new career
Okay.
called a voice scientist. I need a certificate for that. But yeah, I don't know. Basically, what that is, briefly, is just working with singers and people who use their voice a lot with voice disorders. So, you mentioned before that I am a opera singer, or I was trained in classical music. I can also sing gospel music and Broadway. But I got a little bit weary and bored just singing, you know, uh, you know, small children and adults. Um, I got bored doing teaching repertoire. I I'm now on this scientific level where I like to study the anatomy of the vocal cords
Wow.
and things of that such. I mean, I got more interested in what the voice actually does. So yeah, I would like to go further into teaching about what the ills of the voice, and in case they get broken, how to fix it.
Oh, that's interesting because I had Dr. Morales on recently. She has a book out about the voice and the voices in the head and being able to overcome, the pain and the suffering and the
That's
trigger,
right.
all
That's
those things.
right.
That's a
That's what
shame
we're getting
club, right?
to. That's what we're getting to.
Yeah.
I'd love to marry that the physical and the psychological stuff
Mhm.
someday.
Yeah.
I'd love to marry that holistic concept. Mhm.
Well, you sent me, you watched a couple of interviews that we had
Mhm.
conducted, and
Mhm.
you reached out. Matter of fact, I talked with you a couple months ago, but you reached out and gave very unique perspectives on what you saw. And I want to
Yeah.
talk about your thoughts first on the interview that we talked about with Dr. Morales. We were talking about spiritual abuse. And I do know, like some may know, you have a very, very interesting story, which I'll give you an opportunity to kind of, give perspective. But
Okay.
I want to give you a platform where you're free enough to communicate what those triggers, how you became in that space, and how you transition, and some challenges you had, but also your journey to healing. And people do not understand there's many levels to this level of abuse, the cycle of abuse, based on the subject matter, and no one is estranged to what the subject matter that we're going to be talking about. But I don't want to dwell heavily on the burden or the pain. Okay, of course we need to talk about that, but
Mhm.
people need to see the process. And
Mhm.
sometimes this process may take how many years?
Mm. It's individual. It's
Based on the
individual.
individual, right? So in
Yeah.
other words, this is not a overnight thing. And then sometimes we can't keep feeding the pain because the pain will become pleasurable. You ever seen Little Shop of Horror and that big old Venus flytrap? And he would sit out there and he'll say, "Feed me, Seymour, feed me." Well, we
Mhm.
want to be able to feed and share about this healing process, but I want to give you a chance to articulate your experience from listening to the interview to how you got here?
Um, so would you like for me to talk about the beginning of my cult experience, or
Um, you
just address the interview?
you have free space to tell your story, to talk about some things, and in context of your choosing. So I will give you free space to kind of share so people can get context of who you are, how you became a member, a supporter, or teammate of VX
Hmm.
Ministries.
Okay.
A lot of people don't even know you were behind the scenes working alongside myself. And so
Okay.
I'm gonna give you free reign to kind of share your experience and then, what happened in between and where you are now.
Yeah.
I think that's most important.
Okay. I will. I was I was getting a master's at Southern Methodist University in 2009 through 2011, in voice performance. I had heard of G. Craig Lewis and EX Ministries as soon as I moved here. Um, so over time, I was contacted over Facebook by Pastor Lewis personally, to meet him. And I was first uh, asked to be one of the researchers for EX Ministry. And so when he asked to meet me, it was under the guise of being one of the core members of the team of EX Ministries, not the church, not ABC.
Okay.
Um, to be one of the core members as a researcher, to work along with Bobby Carter, who was writing for EX Times at
Yes,
the time.
our good friend Bobby Carter. Bobby.
Mhm. So, and so once I met with him in Arlington, where he lives, we at the restaurant. I I walked in and I saw him with the red baseball cap on, and I said, "Oh, we're not meeting with anyone else. Your wife, mom, no one, secretary, no one's around." Like, no, my wife doesn't do these types of things. So said, okay. It was just he and I. I didn't ask any further questions. Actually, I was flattered that he would ask me a high position. It would be working closely with him. Part of the core team would be you, Teton, myself, Will Ford, Bobby, Tim, and hi, Marcus. Sorry. And Mike. I don't know if you guys know Mike. He was the one who put out the recording, The Truth Behind Rock and Roll. So
Yeah.
mhm, that's how much. And I had met each of these gentlemen except for Mike online. Like, even if I didn't, like, no one lived at the time except Tim. But talked to everyone online, at least on Facebook.
Yeah.
So anyhow, so the guys knew my name. They knew who I was, um, even if they haven't met me personally. So um, then he made promises. Pastor Lewis made promises that I would be a core member. He said I was the first woman, and I would be also instrumental in being the core member of ABC as well.
Okay.
Then I told him I'm not a member of the church. I just moved here, school, and he said that, um, well, I'll give you a choice. Um, after some time lapsed, um, you know, in the relationship progressed. Actually, you will have a choice. Either you will uh, remain um, employed by EX Ministries. I was not getting a paycheck for what I was doing, but or you will remain my friend. Um, and I was so involved with being his friend that he knew that I would be, I wouldn't want to become part of the ministry.
Mm.
And so he was banking on the fact that I would be uh, more, less reluctant to be on that end, and want to just detach from him uh, personally in order to get. He used his authority um, to basically draw me in personally.
Now,
Personal relationship.
now I want to give some kind of some background, or there's some kind of perspective to what happens now that you've moved on from you're telling the story, but what happens when you're in these kind of situations where you follow a ministry? Sometimes we get enamored with personalities. Does that disarm you from those things that you kind of overlook? What creates that trust factor there? Is it because you've been following as a fan or supporter? What happens at that point where you're feeling like you're being made a part of something and it turns into something else unbeknownst to you?
Mm. I'm gonna try. I'm not speaking for all women or all men, of course. For me, my guards were down. Um, I idolized him. He became my idol. Um, and in what we worship, we become. I became that. I kind of morphed into um, sort of like a another. I tell you what, and I say this a lot. I wrote this in the published work. You know how a pimp treats a prostitute? A pimp grooms a prostitute, and up under that, in that relationship, a pimp becomes the prostitute's boyfriend.
Okay.
They don't know they're being pimped at first. They are just dating that person. They're just wooing that prostitute, that young woman. They're not aware that they are being baited,
Okay.
coached. Um, they are only being given things, gifts, sweet talked. Their needs are being fulfilled, whatever those needs are.
Hmm.
You need a brother, you got a brother. You need a friend, you got a friend. You need a father, I got you.
Mm.
You're runaway, uh, your parents are treating you bad, I got you.
Hmm.
Yes, Anita, the line becomes very blurred very quickly. For me, it took about 2 months, generally, but it was a lot of details. Um, whatever you need, the pimp studies you,
Hmm.
and he asked me a lot of questions on those lunches. So he studied me. Women um, need to learn how to study men.
Mm.
Men study women. a
Mhm.
lot.
Mhm.
Okay, controlling men do.
Mhm.
So, a pimp also the next step after grooming and wooing women, the women they after they get their trust, then it's time to break them down, and they do that through malnutrition. This is actually what I went to a sex trafficking organization. It's like uh, they go to. It's called Elijah Rising. I know they don't mind promoting promoting them in Houston. They're international now, but Elijah Rising is an organization. They are anti-sex trafficking. They take you to they actually um, advocate against yeah they advocate against sex trafficking. They take us to brothels, and we used to witness to the ladies in there. Um, so I've been in those atmospheres where women are forced to to do certain things, and also they do that to make money for their families. But anyhow, what I'm saying is there's called something called a breaking room where the
Explain.
pimp
Explain that.
a breaking room is a literal room where pimps or madams, which are women who are pimps,
Okay.
take the women in, and several times a week uh, or several days,
Mhm.
women are kept.
Mhm.
The women who are being trafficked are kept in a room, and they're beat physically, and they're malnutritioned without food or water for certain periods of days. So by the time they take them out, they do what the madams and the pimps tell them to do at will because it weakens their will.
So let me ask you this: what issues you think made you vulnerable in this type of setting? What issues were you pre-existing deficits that you were dealing with that made you vulnerable in these settings?
Yeah. Low self-esteem.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I I have narcissism. Uh, a relative, narcissistic relative. Hmm.
So as time go on, of course, you know, you all entered into what we consider an inappropriate relationship over time, um,
Hmm.
which was a very horrible experience as you described. And the
Hmm.
thing is, I'm trying to avoid a lot of details, but I want to get people to understand what
Yeah.
you was experiencing. So at this point, you are in a place where you're in this high profile ministry and you're struggling with the idea that um, what I'm doing and what I'm involved in was wrong. But
Hmm.
how is it that you were able to still function in that space and not battle with the guilt or the shame or the fact that biblically it was inappropriate, it was a sin? What was that like having the war between those two spaces?
Stockholm syndrome. You feel like you protect your abuser, but at the time he's not your abuser. You are okay. For those who don't know what Stockholm syndrome is, a term that was created by the Swedes, meaning that someone who holds you against your will at first. Let's say you are a hostage
Hmm.
in a bank robbery,
Okay.
but the longer they keep you, the more you begin to protect them.
So, okay, I see. So I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I see exactly what you're saying. So at some point where you know, I understand that, you know, and I'm sure there had been content that may have been distributed that suggested that he used various tactics. Like I remember you mentioned about a dream that you had, right? And
Mhm.
can you talk about that experience and how that even drew you closer?
Okay, you're talking about astral projection?
Well, we could talk about that. Let's talk about that. I remember
Okay.
you
It's a
mentioned
lot.
it was more or less you shared about the idea that it was almost as if he was regurgitating your dream that you had, and you were uncomfortable sharing about that dream.
Yeah. Um, uh, well, looking back, it was probably just we had become really close. But yes, I begin to thank you, Ariel. I begin to dream one night after an encounter that he and I shared a meeting, and I told him about it the next day, and um, I texted him about it, and he began to recount it, and he said, "Oh wow, he is." I dreamt the same thing, and he began to laugh, and he began to talk more in detail about it. It's all, yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
So,
Um,
so at this point, this has become very difficult for you, but it was a place of comfort because he became those things that you needed. And we're talking about here. I'm here with LaDonna Jackson. Those who are just logging in, and she has been very bold and very gracious to reach out and want to talk about her story of healing. But in this portion of our interview and our conversation, rather, there are some things that we have to talk about to get to where we are and to put things in context. She was involved with G. Craig Lewis. Initially, she was brought in to support and help the ministry. And at some point, one thing led to another, and she was unfortunately involved in a relationship that lasted how long?
it lasted a year,
A
1
year.
year.
Yeah. So at what point did you want to get out? At what point was it time to leave and to move on?
February 2011, when I was hospitalized
Wow, let's talk about that.
for attempted suicide. Hmm.
Wow,
Hmm.
wow.
Yeah. And I will say that that was not my first time being hospitalized. For that purpose, yeah, but no, because I have a diagnosis of bipolar
Uh-huh.
disorder. Okay,
As a
so
result of this experience.
as a result of this experience, no, no, I was born with that.
Okay.
Yeah, but it because of this particular experience, it exacerbated it.
So it triggered it.
Hmm.
Wow. Wow.
Hmm. Yes, it was. It happened. Um, Thank you, Sanita. It happened after who had mentioned something about his wife, Sabatha. So that's all that I'll share. And it was, um, yeah, I ended up admitting myself because I can, being living with that for so long for the disorder, I knew when I was becoming out of control. I knew what when I started to feel like I was about to do something
Mhm, mhm.
that wasn't uh, safe for me. I was by myself again. Um, my family was in Houston, and he had also, told me to stop listening to my mom.
Told you
And
something to your mom.
mhm, yeah, because I was really accountable to my mom. I
Mhm,
was really close to my mom, not my dad, but my mom. And I told him, like I would say, early on, before we got really close inappropriately, I would say, "Oh, my mom, asked me where I was going tonight," and things like he's like, "Really? What are you 12?" Yeah. So you gotta. get away from that. You're grown. So it was you need to stop accounting to her. So it was he was taking over those roles. He was consuming. He began to be those roles for me. Um, that's what they do.
So
Uh,
I have a few questions. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I have a few questions that kind of much are coming in through the chat, which I think would be good. So, do you believe that your disorder, or tell me what at what age were you diagnosed, and do you think that your diagnosis uh, was a contribution to your vulnerability?
okay. Um, I was diagnosed when I was 37.
Okay.
Um, it's in my family, so I've had it. That's why I say it's biological and genetic.
Mhm.
Uh, do I think, and let me say this, the definition for bipolar disorder, there's two types, by type 1, type 2. I have type 2, um, which is not as intense. Type 2, well, bipolar disorder period is it's high, it's a mood disorder, um, and behavioral disorder characterized by high moods, high highs, and low lows. And it could be people. It manifests in different ways in certain people. Um, People sometimes show it. A lot of people have more mania than they have depression.
Okay.
Um, Staying up all night, and some people have more depression. So yeah, I think it contributed. The only thing, like I said, the suicide attempts, stuff like that, that was my I began to think about death a lot.
So, at any point, did the pastor was he made aware of these things? How he never knew?
I didn't know at that time.
You didn't know at that time.
I
Okay.
didn't know at that time that I had it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was struggling a lot in my life. But no, I didn't know that I had uh but I don't- and I by the way, right now I don't identify. I don't say I am bipolar. I say I have bipolar
Okay.
disorder because I don't identify with that. But anyhow, no, he was not aware. Um, mm-mm, mm-mm. If he picked up anything or something like that and could have taken that for his advantage, I don't know. Probably so. People try to do that.
Well, at what point did you leave? What made you leave? Talk to me about exiting
Oh,
the
the
relationship.
day, so the day after I got out of the hospital, I went back to my apartment and I sat on my couch and he came over. He came over my apartment and I told you this story, Teton. He comes over and he says, God told me to take my hands off of you. And he puts his hand, he carries a gun with him all the time. He puts his hand on his gun, on his back, where he kept his weapon. And he goes, You gotta go. And he called me by my middle name, Kay. He didn't call me by my first, LaDonna.
Mhm.
And and still in that state of mind, Stockholm, no, I want to, you have to know how this works. Stockholm syndrome. I want to stay, I said. Oh, I was bargaining. If I can, I won't, I don't have to be in EX Ministries. I could just be, I could just be around. I could just communicate with you once a month versus, every weekend or something like that. I was being very bargaining, because that mentality. I wanted to hold on to something. It wasn't lust. It wasn't love. It was that driving. Um, Now I know it's that worship
Mm.
God. But it's also that, I don't know if I don't call it brainwash. I would just call it, I was checked. I was groomed.
Mhm.
I was just ready, you know. So he had me so, where some people, when I tell this story to a few select people, they say, "Oh, God used him. Oh, God used him." I said, "Let me tell you something. I don't think God used him to tell me to go back home to my family, but I will tell you this. I had to go, and I did. That was the result." Um, Thank you, Marcus. I really had to go. That was the result. So he came to my house and said, with the hand on the gun, "God told me to let you go." I was bargaining with him. He said, "Ha, ha, ha. He told me to take my hands off you and you gotta go." Um, like he had the power,
Mm.
but the spirit behind it
Mm.
was, "I told you to go. I'm
Mm.
I'm the messenger
Mm.
behind this, and you got to go because God is telling me to let you go." So whatever people think that God saved me through him and all of this, listen, Jesus rescued me.
Mm.
Uh, so say whatever you want to say, but Jesus, it was Jesus. It wasn't G. Craig Lewis. Um, in my mentality at the time, it wasn't it was only Jesus. It wasn't him. I was going to go eventually because
Mm.
I had reached out to a friend of mine
Mhm.
to try to. No, that's another conversation. I'm sorry.
No, no,
Back
you're fine. You're fine because I think
It's so much. It's just so much. I
yeah.
just didn't want to get off track of your question. What happened? What really made me go? I had made several attempts to go before the mental institution.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
before the mental institution, I met with him and said, "I want to go." In his truck, "I want to go." I had attempted to record him on my phone,
Mhm.
him telling me, "Were you lying to me about this? Were you lying to me about that?" Without his knowledge. And I was instructed by the Holy Ghost through my sister, "Do not let him touch your hand."
Mhm.
I let him touch my hand. And 3 weeks later, I ended up in the mental institution.
3 weeks later
So
afterwards.
3 weeks. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
So LaDonna, as your story, and we kind of skip some gaps, but as we move forward in this conversation, I know that there were times where you had spent time at the home. The wife and children were sent away on vacation. You had opportunity to experience a 16 bean soup, and you were
Mm.
exposed to the space that was uncommonly given because, of course, one, you had no business being there. Two, it was inappropriate. But because of what you had to go through, the story continues when you finally got out of this level of bondage, this abuse, because it's plain abuse. Let's be real. This is real abuse where you were lured in to be a support of the ministry, and then it turns into massage tables, and he wants to do this and all the different inappropriate sexual contact. How is it that you could leave this situation and what you have experienced, being that one, you were dealing with the diagnosis. Now that you found out you were dealing with diagnosis, because a lot of people that are watching this may assume or form opinions that she's making this up. You know, this can't be true. So we want to make sure we be clear on this is your story, and I'm giving you a free space to tell your story. But I also don't want people to be stuck here.
No.
So if I can allow, if you want to, if you feel ready to, let's pick the story up to where you begin to realize that you needed help.
Yeah. Okay. I should, upon leaving Dallas, I should have stopped there and gotten the therapy. I've been in therapy since I was 15 years old because then something was wrong.
Mm.
But not concerning this. Growing up Pentecostal, Church of God in Christ, is a very strict, constricting. I love y'all. I love Pentecostal. Please don't come for me with that. I love the Pentecost. I love the Black experience. I love my roots. There are some things, though. There are some things that developed in me that God did not love me. God, the warrior, God, the strict dictator. I didn't receive love when I came back. I was, when I first came back, one of the pastors, he was white, that I reached out to. He said, "I'm sorry for what happened to you, but make sure you're lovable. Make sure to make yourself easy to love," was his response.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that hurt people hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
But his concern was to make sure that I was responsible for making others love me, not that the shepherd took care of the sheep. I needed to be loved on, not, the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be free, so I asked to be free from preachers. I sought for deliverance. I sought for healing. I had 5 sheets of paper with emotional healing scriptures and physical healing scriptures because I knew something was wrong with my mind, although I wasn't diagnosed. Those didn't work for me. I was in every prayer line, all the time. I was one of those people. I was, you guys familiar with 700 Club? No joke. I would call that.
Yeah.
I practiced like magical religion. No, I'm not witchcraft. I'm saying I would open up the Bible, whatever verse it fell on, that was for me. That's magical. That's not God. That's not really the Holy Spirit. That's just taking a chance. That's good as a palm reading. That's as good as that.
Mm-hmm.
You're just betting,
Mm-hmm.
take probability, let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's not God. I was doing everything. I would call my leaders, bug them to death. Ministers, prophets.
Mm-hmm.
God taught me prophecy. I mean, intercession. And go from church to church to church. Seeking healing, deliverance. Not just about this, but seeking a community.
Mm-hmm.
The same community I sought for in EX Ministries, the community to embrace me.
Now, pause there.
Yeah.
Seeking a community to embrace you. Let me go back and ask you this question. Are you comfortable with talking about some early development trauma or challenges that opened up the portals for this kind of abuse? Because a lot of times, mind you, something as an example, if we talk about fatherlessness all the time and we preach a methodology or a preaching style that says you are this way because you didn't have a father or this or that, And at some point, we're drawn to the information, we're drawn to the insight, and these deficits that we've grown up with at some point end up being fulfilled by individuals, by leaders, and not God. So, can you talk about any childhood trauma, some things maybe contributed to the abuse as it led up to this circumstance?
I can't name names
Hmm.
because I honor.
No, name names.
I honor my elders. Listen, but I will say, people, we've got to get away from judging everyone's journey, each journey. I'm a card carrying, you could say scripture, you can say, but I will say this. I narcissism is so prevalent and it was so intense in my younger days that it affected me when I did not know it affected me until I got older.
So you was
So,
you were surrounded around an abusive uh, culture
yeah,
growing up as a child.
yeah, nurture. It wasn't nature, it was nurture.
Okay.
So whether you want to say that say when you're 40 years old, you can't blame it on this and you can't blame it on that you're grown, but you don't know. Sometimes it has developed inside of you
Hmm.
until you get that age.
Hmm.
And yes, it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And you can't slap scripture on that.
Hmm.
It doesn't take just scripture, but it takes all God told me. It was at one point after I left organized religion 2 years ago was, I will be with you. I will never forsake you. All you can do is just know
Hmm.
and rely on him. But sometimes, not and the only father that will that had to reintroduce, he had to reintroduce himself to me, God, as not a dictator, not a narcissist, actually as a motherly. I'm not calling God a she, okay? Guys, I'm saying a more soft, loving,
So,
balanced God, not a non the word I think is Jehovah Shammah,
mm,
the breasted one. So I was a very fractured person, very broken. Like I would look up in my visions and see broken glass. Okay, just this so no prophet, no apostle, no minister, no elder could tell me anything.
mhm,
I knew what I knew.
mhm.
A woman's development, and I know from that it started when you're 2, 3, or 4 years old. And I'm so sorry to tell you. I say I'm not sorry, but I have to tell you guys, it just starts there, and you may not see it until you are up there.
Okay.
Um, so to address the question earlier, did bipolar have anything to do with my involvement in this? Since it's a mood disorder, I would overreact to things after they happen. It messes with my cognitive ability a little bit. But no, I'm intellectual. I don't think my decision making skills aren't affected.
Mm,
My self-esteem was messed up. Okay.
LaDonna, I really appreciate you in the flow of this conversation because I know it could be very difficult, very, very difficult to talk
Mhm.
about this, but I want you wanted to really share, and I want to know, how are you feeling in this space? How does it feel to really get this out of your system and be able to talk about this openly like this?
I guess I was prepared for this all my life. I don't really. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. So
Yeah.
now that you are in a very good space, you're seeing all these things that are happening now after all these years. What is it that you can share to other young women that may have been in this situation, may have been in worse circumstances, or even just on the outside, helping people understand the sensitivity of it? Can you talk
Mm.
about what that's like? Because I know you've heard the stories, I know you've heard about some of the things that are happening, but how can you really encourage these women or these individuals that may have experienced something similar?
Follow the voice of God. Learn how to separate. As hard as it is, learn how to compartmentalize man from God.
Mm,
I hate when people say, no matter what the man of God or the woman of God did, God didn't do it to you. So why are you mad at God? Oh, I want to vomit when they say that to me.
mm,
Um, I don't, I know what they mean. I know what they're trying to say, but most likely those people hadn't gone through what we gone through.
mhm,
I do want to throw this out there though. Just love God and
mm,
know that He loves you.
mm,
Don't go fast. Don't be rushed. He will never leave you nor forsake you.
mm,
Learn how to listen to God.
mhm,
Take your time.
mhm,
There's certain scriptures I cannot read. I cannot lift the Bible up and its entirety because certain scriptures don't work for me. Um, before I leave, can I share those particular scriptures that people have used against me, Teton?
You're more than welcome, and while you're doing that, the one thing while you're preparing for that, there'll be this one last piece I want to
Oh,
read. Text
yeah,
message you sent to me, but yeah, go ahead and share that.
yeah.
Share
It's
that.
probably the same one. I don't.
Great, great.
Uh, I'll do that because that's important for people who struggle with not episodic. There's a difference between situational and episodic depression versus major depression.
Mm,
You've been through this spiritual abuse and you're suffering from depression because of this particular situation. That's episodic and situational. If you suffer from depression, oh, God knows all your life, you just go down and you can't get out of bed and you just cry and you have panic attacks or something like that. Anxiety, there's another disorder. Then you have bipolar, that's another disorder. You have all those things. Then there's another level there of mental illness that people don't talk about. Okay. So anyway, I want to get to these. I want to address this. Uh, the Bible is infallible. I can't get myself to read all of it right now because it was used so horribly against me, harshly against me. But I will address some things that people may use against you. God doesn't address mental illness People may say they do, but I will tell you, he didn't. The things that I remember when I told you that I tried 5 pages of emotional healing every day. I meditated on it. I went through prayer lines and people would lay hands on me. I called TBN, the 700 Club, and I was really gung ho, but none of it will work. And the Lord told me, I'm not taking you this way. I'm taking you another way. Okay. So let me give you these scriptures that people would use against me. Here are a few examples of what they say that promotes further abuse. In regards to situational or major depression, they would tell me, "Are you ever happy?" I had a first lady ask me that. In regards to bipolar, they said a double-minded man is unstable in all their ways. That's in James. In regards to anxiety disorder, be anxious for nothing. How many times have anyone heard that? Probably more people on here that have depression and anxiety than bipolar. Be anxious for nothing. They called me up in prayer line and said, I hear the Lord say, be anxious for nothing. What you're hearing is you're picking up my anxiety.
Mm.
Okay. You can pick up easily my anxiety, but you don't know that it's a visceral reaction to the trauma that I've endured. And it's something that I cannot help because I've just been in it so long. And my brain actually has restructured itself. So there's bipolar, it's already restructured. Then on top of that, trauma has literally changed the structure of my brain on top of that. It's real, it's neuroscience.
Wow. So real quickly, for the sake of time, and I think what you're sharing is just absolutely phenomenal. I'm really excited to continue to see your journey. But let me ask you this last thing. And you shared something with me via text message. And you said, so I was up finishing, we were talking about the videos that you experienced, right? And in our conversation via text, if I could find your text.
Okay.
You said, before I left organized religion, God told me the part of my purpose was defend, protect, and serve mental ill communities, right? Especially within the church. I learned bits of what empowered us and what oppressed us. You said, you've only scratched the surface, Teton, on spiritual abuse. There is so much involved within recovery. There's so much involved within recovery. Before you talk about getting the help that they need, you've got to address the ignorance of general populace that promotes further abuse in the church. Black ministers, therapists, Black therapists, so forth and so on. Judgment still runs rampant. Here's a few examples of what they say to promote this further abuse. And you just went through some of these things. And I think one you may mention of number 4. I think you did number 3. In regard to personal faith, do you believe in miracles? Do you know that God can heal? And then you mentioned number 5, in regard to the misunderstanding of mental illness. Deliverance means to get clean or clean all the way out. These are great conversations and discussions that I think that we have to continue to have. And I just applaud you for talking through this, because I believe that there are many people, even based on what's happening now, are experiencing this wave of hurt, this wave. And I would ask people, well, why did you come? Why did you? Well, it's not a matter of why I did something. It's now we had a conversation of, how do I get free? How do I heal? Right. And I think it's great to really hear your story, because there's a lot of spiritual abuse that happens that doesn't just start in the church. It starts at home.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It starts in our youth.
Yes.
And you understand what I'm saying? And so I think that this was really good. I want to get some feedback from a guest, one of your favorite guests. And I want to bring her up to encourage you, because I think we all need to be encouraged and be inspired. And I think And I really think you've done an excellent way of communicating. So while I'm setting up for the Dr. Zanetta Wooden, I'm going to give you an opportunity to continue to encourage those members, those individuals that are experiencing this, and just inspire them.
Yes. Uh, there is no, um, life does get better.
Hmm.
Life does get better. Enc- be encouraged through, um, there's always a picture I have in my mind with Jesus standing on water. And I know I'm getting Jesus-y again, that's not like me. But uh, standing on water with ocean seas crashing, and he's saying, "Just follow me. He won't lead you astray." That's the last dream I've had
Hmm.
a couple of weeks ago, and he won't.
Hmm.
Trust him, and
Hmm.
you have to lean on to be less dependent on man. It's a detox, and it's
Absolutely.
I've been away from organized religion for 2 years. I travel to Dallas once a month. I live in Houston. I travel to Dallas to go
Mhm.
to a support group for cults. Uh,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I get the help that I need desperately. I'm seeking currently for a therapist who understands um, CPTSD, which is complex PTSD,
Okay.
bipolar, the Black church experience. And I'm very particular who I go to. So it's very, very difficult. So
Mhm.
to find one who knows about spiritual abuse and all of that I just named. So
Wow.
go where you have to go. Be particular, be
Mhm.
picky. Don't let anyone, because the biggest thing, guys, haven't we all experienced enough control and having power over us? Um, I know hurt people, but and I know they'll say, don't try to control me. I don't want to feel like, I have to, step on eggshells around you, and they'll try to guilt you and gaslight you and saying all this stuff. But listen, let me tell you something. Tell them, hey, you have to, if you love me, you will walk with me
Mhm.
through this. You're not going to become a controller. You have to trust God that you're not going to become an abuser as well. You have to ask God to help you through that you won't become what someone else did to you. And I know we talked about that. I've seen some of the videos that you've done, Teton. I'm glad you said that, and some of your guests brought that up. But um, um, I'm afraid that people assume that about the abused. Oh, they can become an abuser. I had people call me Jezebel because they said PTSD evolves into Jezebels.
No, no. Okay. Okay. Well, we've heard the Jezebel conversation, and you know how that goes. And I
Yeah,
believe that there are men who can operate in that same capacity.
yeah. Or whoever
You
has
know.
PTSD, they said, oh, PTSD separates and becomes schizophrenia, and
Right.
the double mind becomes Jezebel. That's what people who with mental illness have. So I want to be very clear that you stay in that vein. Be particular about the people you have around you. Um, Go seek support, but be very picky.
Mm. LaDonna, this has just been a very wonderful conversation. I really, really appreciate you, and I want you to continue to grow in healing. The healing continues.
Mhm.
I think the transition from first coming into knowledge of something is
Yeah.
very dreadful, right? You bring your family over to a particular location. You followed an organization. You believe this is God, where He wants me to be, and then you get into that space and you find out that there are things that are not quite biblical. You're dealing with a lot of stress, and when these things come to light, it's traumatic. It's very traumatic for many people. And to go through what you have gone through at the level that you have experienced it, and you're still evolving. I want and encourage everyone that is looking and listening and watching to really keep you in mind, because again, we get lost in the social media back and forth, but we all need to continue to pray and look after one another and encourage one another. So I want you to be encouraged, most importantly, but all in all, this is a very, very safe space. And I want to make sure that you continue to be excited about where you're going. I'm sure one day, you're going to be blessed to have a wonderful family. You go look back on this interview and you say, hey, look where I've come from.
Yeah.
Look where I've been delivered from,
Mhm.
and, but I thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring on your favorite guest, one of your favorite guests. And
Hi.
Oh my God, my heart is just filled with joy.
Aw.
I would like for Miss Annetta to kind of just give an overview of what we have seen, what we've experienced. She wants to encourage you. She wants to encourage those that here that are experiencing these kind of spiritual abuse, and so that we can continue to build good conversation where there's healing, and we're not spending a whole lot of energy no longer on the pain, but the recovery. Thank you, Miss Annetta. You are a wonderful, wonderful person.
Thank you so much, Teton. I really appreciate you having this platform to be able to shed light on, what has become taboo. Um, Spiritual abuse, control in the church, predators in the church, and we keep a quiet. We try to protect them, but this is good, because there's light on the other side. There is joy on the other side. There is just look at LaDonna. I mean, she's glowing, you know, um, because of what happened. I mean, it is tragic. It is, but it becomes a platform of strength, of love. It
Mhm.
becomes a platform of, see what you tried to do. You tried to silence me. You tried to, put me down. But not only did God not allow that to happen, but it allowed me to get closer to God. It
Mhm.
allowed me to hear God clearer and not have that blurred line, that blurred relationship, the difference between God and man. And you mentioned that today. Compartmentalize, know who God is, know the voice of God. And, you're amazing. And it is so ironic that you are an opera singer.
Mhm.
It is so ironic that um, it's your voice that God has gifted to bless many. But of course, the true enemy wanted it to be silenced.
Mm.
The true enemy wanted it to be silenced. But there's this thing that we have, and the love that we have for God cannot be silenced. It can be stopped a little bit. It can be stepped back a little bit, but no, it can't be silenced. It cannot be silenced. Um, your ability to speak in grace, your ability to speak with love and not accusations. You're just speaking truth, and that's all it is. The truth is the truth, and nobody can change it. A relationship happened. That's the truth.
Mhm.
But you did not demonize. That's growth. That's maturity. That's the true love of God. You don't demonize. You look at the situation itself and what was done. That's wrong. But your true voice came out. And
Mhm.
I'm sitting back here. I'm like, yes, LaDonna, yes, yes, yes. There's certain things that we don't want to talk about because we're not ready yet, and it's okay. It's okay. I used to counsel. I have a master's degree in pastoral counseling, and I used to counsel married couple and sexual abused individuals. I was prostituted. I was human trafficked. So I know what you're talking about, and I know where you come from, and I know that feeling, even though you were not a part of that society that we call human traffic, the one, but you have that same emotional tear. You still have that same emotional breakdown. You still experience the same thing. But coming out of it, that experience in itself gives you the strength. I was talking to Teton, and I was explaining to him, when you heal, one of the ones that I was counseling, she said, when do I heal? When do I start healing? I said, the healing started when you first got hurt. That's the nature of the body. That's the nature of God. You start to heal the moment you got hurt.
Yeah.
The only thing is, it's the process. It's a process. So a lot of people don't know, but this is a scar.
Yeah.
I have a scar right there.
Mm.
And it took 4 months for this scar to heal. It's it's a year now, actually. It's been a year, but I can't move my head. I'm still limited. So I'm still in the healing process because the muscles was cut. The muscles right now are finding the strength to come back.
Wow.
And that's what it is. That's where you're at. That's what you're exercising, those muscles that have been cut, and you're healing. Girl, you look good. You don't look like what you've been through. You do not look like what you've been through. What you've been through, you don't wear it. Because why? Because God makes you look good.
Well, I really appreciate the encouraging word. LaDonna has spoken highly about you, Dr. Gordon, and I wanted to make sure that she was able to connect with you in this conversation. I have one last question, and I think this is important. As you are able to digest, Zanetta, what you have observed and what you have experiencing, what is the best practice for believers in this what we call this social media stratosphere that connects the personal relationships and the experience of the abuse that we're having? What would you subscribe to people how we should navigate through this? Because I think, in my opinion, the most important thing is for us to understand that healing is the number one priority.
Yes.
Like I stated earlier, the exposure has been done. All of these things have happened. You're starting to see men and women and families coming together, and there are different groups. There are some that have planted the seed. There's some that have, kind of watered the seed a little bit.
Yes.
So, and here comes the increase, and we know that increase comes from the Lord. But what would you say to these individuals, groups, men, women, leaders? How would you encourage them to continue this journey of healing? How do we avoid revisiting these pains and challenges of church hurt or whatever it may be? In addition to, of course, the Word of God. That's our priority, but we know that sometimes we can weaponize the word in a space that's not healthy.
Right.
Word is to heal.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about how we can encourage these groups of individuals, including myself and others, who are experiencing this pandemic too?
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of people say a lot of things when they don't really know the answer. So they'll use certain scriptures to think that is the answer. Like the different scriptures that was hurled at you, or to say that you have to forgive, or these are the different scriptures. A double-minded man is unstable in his ways. That is true. It is true. It is scripture. However, is it expedient? Is that the right one? Is that the right scripture to use? There's certain scriptures that we can use that it is true, but is it the right one? The one that I quoted on here is Proverbs 12:25, and anxiety of the heart. It sinks, but a cheerful, kind word will bring it back up. So when someone's saying, I'm hurt, you don't have to say anything. You really don't. Just listen. Listen is an antonym of silent. So if you look at the word listen, listen, if you do an anagram, it means it's silent. Listen to where it is. Listen to the hurt. Then lovingly, effectively find out what will work. And if you don't know, say you don't know. There's so many preachers and ministers and all of that. And sometimes even our elders, even our sisters, our brothers, they say the wrong thing at the wrong time. Do they mean it? They're trying to help, but don't know how to. And that's what it is. You have to learn how to listen. Listen, what is really being said? With everything that has happened, sometimes we categorize ourselves in a position where we're not really in that category. We're being pimped. We're not. So with the words that we say, because of we hear it so much, then we internalize it and we regurgitate it. And that's what happens. These preachers pimping. So now we use that same verb, that same analogy, that same, I've been pimped. No, I have not been pimped. They have perverted me. Big difference. It's a big difference. So when you say I've been pimped, that means I now become a whore or a prostitute. I'm not a whore. I'm not a prostitute. I have been perverted. I have been used in the wrong capacity. And so when we put truth where it really is, and we have this ability to not really look at truth, but we want it. We want to hear the truth, but we don't want to accept it. And that's where we need to kind of, navigate. How do we do that? How do we talk? How do we say things? We need to say things in a loving manner, in a forgiving manner, in a graceful manner, in a merciful manner. If we don't know those, and the reason why we don't have those is because we don't have it on the inside.
Okay.
If we have it on the inside, because you can only throw up what was inside.
That's it.
You can only give out what's inside.
Right.
So like what you said, LaDonna, hurt people say hurt things. So listen to what's being said. Oh, okay. She loves me, but she's hurt also. So she's giving me, I understand. So the words, we have to listen to it. I was explaining to a good friend of mine today, I said, if you're a broken glass and if you drink from that broken glass, there's a high probability that you're going to drink shards of glass. Then I will drink it and I will get cut on the inside.
Wow.
So the vessel has to be intact before they speak. So when you want to give grace, get grace. If you want to get love, get love. If you want to give peace, get peace. If you want to give mercy, get mercy. If you want to give forgiveness, get forgiveness. And that's what it is.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you, wonderful women. LaDonna, amazing. And of course, the infamous, she who will always be named, Doctor.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want everyone to really understand that this is important conversation. It may not be the normal flow of dialogue, but I think that somewhere in this conversation, people will be able to connect, heal, and understand that at the end of the day, I don't want to stay here. I got to get out of this place. And the more we begin to talk about these things in a very open form and build relationships like we're doing now, I think that this will grow and be able to help one another, be inspired, be encouraged, and be uplifted. So the healing continues. It continues.
Yes.
Any last words? Well, I got some last. No, I'm kidding. Thank you, ladies, so much. I'm going to be having a good friend of mine come up, and he's going to speak to the men from a different perspective. Those of you that are still on board, you can be here. We're going to reset this call and establish another platform. But again, I want to thank you, gracious to you. Those who want to stay in contact with Miss Sonetta Wooden, her email, she will be able to post that email. And let me go ahead and just take care of that now so we can get that out the way.
I just want to tell LaDonna, you're a warrior. You are a true warrior. You're the one that I call the generals in the field of the army of the Lord. That's, my hat, my heart, my whole being just bows down to you in your greatness, because you emit God.
Thank you.
And you, like what I said, you look good for what you've been through.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you all. This has been amazing. And again, we'll be back. We'll be back because the healing continues.
Yes.
The healing continues. Love you,
Thank
ladies.
you, John.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.